Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Milky Cake Thermal Shock Processed Colombia from Doc Coffee Roasters. And there's the box right there. And Doc, based out of Amsterdam, Netherlands. And this review is somewhat unique in the sense that I've actually had this coffee a number of times before I ever purchased this box. And while I typically don't like reviewing coffees that I have a lot of familiarity with, I've actually been asked multiple times to discuss this coffee a little further. So when I did see this at a local coffee shop, I felt like it was a great opportunity to dive into this one a little deeper, as anyone that's tried this coffee knows that this one's a very interesting coffee. So for that reason, I felt like it would make for a very interesting review. And I'm definitely looking forward to discussing this one, as this right here is day 41. And recipe we went with for this coffee was a 16:1 water to coffee ratio, brewed at 99 degrees Celsius, about 210 degrees Fahrenheit. And I like this one best through the Chemex, which indicates a more medium grind. Roast profile for this coffee, as I've mentioned in previous Doc reviews, they do tend to roast on the very light side of things. This one is definitely light by most standards and metrics. Once again, we do have a filter roast here, and this one seems to be on par with a lot of Nordic light coffee roasters, as this is a very light cup of coffee. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. Day 15, first impression. Ran it through the V60, and this coffee was exceptionally well defined, to the point where all I could taste was cinnamon in huge abundance with a complementary nutmeg-like quality. There's so much spice and this super sweet vanilla component to the cup that it left a very positive first impression. But as I've mentioned in the past, I actually mentioned in one video that this is my favorite Doc coffee that I've ever had, and it does have an extremely well-defined spice-like profile to it right from the onset. It's so blatant and obvious that it doesn't take somebody with a lot of familiarity drinking coffee to really pull out a lot of the notes in this one. Day 18, ran it through the Chemex, and a near identical day, as there was little to differentiate between the two cups, as it continues to offer a very well-defined cinnamon-like coffee. It replicates what I would describe as a snickerdoodle cookie at times, with a super sweet forward cup and a slight bit of brightness as it does cool, but once again, just an exceptionally well-defined coffee. Day 21, ran it through the April brewer, and the coffee continues to remain extremely consistent yet again, as it offers a super sweet cinnamon forward aspect that dominates the cup. While there are complementary aspects, including a very slight nuttiness, the cup continues to feel like it's a sugary sweet dessert, and it's been extremely consistent up to this point. So we continue on to day 24, up to temperatures, ran it through the Chemex. If possible, the cup somehow felt like it was offering even more clarity, as there was even more definition to the coffee as it continued to offer an extremely cinnamon forward cup. Highly pronounced sweetness as well, with an abundance of vanilla. The cup has an extremely consistent base to it, while it's simultaneously continuing to improve. So once again, notes been pretty consistent up to this point, but that's because this coffee does tend to skew very heavily in one specific direction. Day 27, same adjustments with the V60 with the increased temperature, and this is the first time that it has skewed a little bit more in the slightly disappointing direction, as the entirety of the cup felt a little less defined. But I mean, a little less defined for this coffee is basically like saying, wow, this is so cinnamon forward too. Okay, it's pretty cinnamon forward, because that's just how blatant and obvious the profile in this one is. Early focus on some brightness with a nutty quality, but the very cinnamon and vanilla forward aspects are slightly more toned down. So from this point, I decided to settle on the Chemex, because it just seemed to offer more of that clarity. Day 30, definitely settled on the Chemex, as running it back through that brew method, once again, I was feeling a fair bit of that cinnamon and vanilla forward aspect. Extremely well defined, yet again, a little more to say as the coffee continues to remain very consistent. It's one of those things where I really had to think and try to pull out the other notes, because those two things are so prominent right at the forefront of this coffee in a very sweet direction, that trying to pull out those other things, it just takes a little bit more effort when this coffee is just skewing very heavily in that direction. Day 33. Very similar coffee yet again, as it continues to offer an abundance of spice-like qualities, cinnamon, sweeter vanilla at the forefront, an abundance of sugariness, more of the very slight nuttiness and brightness, but it continues to remain an extremely straightforward cup of coffee. Day 36, nothing more to add, as once again, it's been extremely consistent. Here on day 41, yet again extremely consistent, as it's offering a very sweet cinnamon forward cup with plenty of the vanilla on the back end that is present from the previous days. Clean, pronounced, very distinct, not too much to add to that. Start to finish, been a very consistent coffee. At times it seems to improve. At this point it seems to have settled into what's been extremely consistent from probably around the day 27 mark going forward. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. And we have 3 level 4s, so let's go through those real quick. And I don't think any of these 3 will come as a surprise whatsoever. Cleanliness, level 5, yes. And that's going to be attributed to the fact that this coffee has such an exceptionally well-defined profile, to the extent that few coffees actually have. That being said, there isn't any sort of fermentiness that I might have expected, any sort of funkiness that I might have expected, any lack of clarity in any sense that would kind of hinder the cleanliness scoring that level 5. So it scores a level 5, but it's because, once again, it's about as blatant of a cup of coffee as you could experience. Sweetness, level 5. Yes, also pretty blatant in terms of that sweetness. The sweetness is present right from the start throughout the entirety of the time drinking this coffee. It's an extremely sweet cup of coffee, one of the sweetest coffees that we have reviewed on this channel. It's really kind of mesmerizing how this coffee turns out this way, given that this is a slightly heavier processed Colombian coffee. And I mean, we've reviewed a lot of those on this channel. I don't like any of them, but this coffee right here is clean and sweet, so don't really know what to make of that. But then the spice quality, level 5, once again, that's not surprising, an extremely well-defined spice-like quality that's present within this coffee. Then we have a couple of level 4s. We'll start with the finish, level 4. Maybe that's the one surprise when it comes to this coffee, is that it doesn't have an overly long-lasting finish. I mean, it has a pretty noticeable and distinct finish, but I would fully expect maybe that cinnamon quality to continue to carry throughout, but it kind of finishes that cinnamon sugar sweet without too much more added to that. Brightness, level 4. Acidity, yeah, I don't think that that's too surprising given the roast profile of this coffee, but it's definitely secondary given that the sweetness really seems to dominate the brightness that's present within this one. So level 4 works for me. Florality, level 4. Yes, and I think maybe I had a little bit of difficulty kind of differentiating where I wanted to put that vanilla quality, because vanilla could go into the florality or the spice, but I honestly just said, okay, well, maybe it's a little bit more of this vanilla cinnamon sugar aspect to this one. Once again, kind of reminded me of a snickerdoodle. So the level 5 was reserved for the spice, given that that still, for me, was a little bit more dominant than the florality within this one. So level 5 there, level 4 for florality. And then honestly, the only other thing that's worth discussing in this tasting wheel is the body, which is at a level 3. And that's kind of surprising given that this one was run through the Chemex and this tasting wheel was made with the Chemex, but even then it still had a fair bit of texture and body to it. But if you look at this tasting wheel, it's a very weird looking tasting wheel, because pretty much none of the fruit components scored anything. We have the citrus at a level 2, but everything else is much more toned down at that level 1 mark, and very few things reach anything above that level 2. So it's an interesting looking tasting wheel. I do think, though, it's a pretty good representation of what I was getting from this coffee. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I have so many to say about this one, and I think the first thing I want to say is some of the positives. I do like this coffee. And there have been a lot of coffees in the past that have had very cinnamon forward profiles to them, but they don't seem to offer the same sort of clarity. For example, the one I can think of most recently was the coffee we had reviewed from the Picky Chemist, which did seem to offer a fermenty aspect to it. It's those Costa Rican coffees typically that tend to have that very cinnamon forward profile, but they don't offer the same sort of clarity and cleanliness overall. This one has both, and given that I am somebody that really loves cinnamon, I've said that every single time I've reviewed one of those coffees that do have those cinnamon forward profiles, I should, in theory, like this coffee, and that's why I do. Snickerdoodle is my favorite type of cookie. I just love cinnamon-flavored desserts in general. So when you're offering this in clean and sweet manners, then it's going to be something that I'm going to enjoy from start to finish. So I enjoyed this coffee, but here's kind of the negative, and the interesting thought I've always had about this coffee. I do have a little bit of difficulty believing that this coffee might not be infused in some sense. If there is enough evidence to prove otherwise that this coffee isn't infused, then okay, I will believe it. But for me, for the most part, it's just really hard to believe that a coffee can taste this well defined while still offering this sort of clarity. And then I've been asked the same question about Letty Bermudez and Luna Bermudez. Those coffees are also done by Diego Bermudez. This is a Diego Bermudez coffee, so I have wondered about those in the past, and I could be wrong on this one, but even if it is an infused coffee, I feel like this is the best infused coffee I have ever had, but it's just really hard for me to believe that coffee can have this sort of profile to it. So I've always been kind of skeptical about this coffee. I don't know for sure, not making any sort of accusations. I wouldn't be surprised either way, but either way, I do enjoy this coffee, so it doesn't really matter to me at the end of the day. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to: anyone that really likes their super sweet kind of desserty coffees, because this one, if you've never tried it, it's pretty blatant right from the start and it carries throughout. There isn't too much work that needs to be done. Pretty much for the most part, no matter how I brewed this coffee, it was very straightforward. It's a very easy to brew coffee. It's a very consistent coffee, very sweet and clean cup of coffee. So it's something that I feel like everybody should try at least once, because it intrigued me enough to want to make a review, even though I had a lot of familiarity with this one. For the most part, I think that's the best way I can leave this review. If you've by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And this right here has been a review of the Milky Cake, thermal shock processed Colombia from Doc Coffee Roasters. Thank you for watching.